President, with all respect to the distinguished Majority Leader, this was an unnecessary vote today. The Majority Leader said, what is a filibuster? I can remember one that wasn't called a filibuster. I can remember when President Bush the first nominated a very non-controversial University of Tennessee president who had been governor to be the Secretary of Education of the United States about 20 years ago. There was a Democratic Senate at the time, and the senator from Ohio decided that he wanted more time to study the qualifications of the nominee from Tennessee. That nominee was me. I thought that was an extraordinary period of time. It was 87 days between the time President Bush announced my nomination and the time the Senate unanimously confirmed me. That was a cabinet position. I went around to see Senator Warren Rudman and asked him what I should do. He said, you don't have any cards, you don't do anything. The Senate has a right to consider, with its constitutional prerogative of advise and consent, the nominees of the president. That's what the Senate's there for. So I said, well, Warren, how did you get to be a senator? He said, well, I'll tell you a story. He said, President Ford nominated me in 1976 to be on the, I believe it was the Federal Communications Commission, and the senator from New Hampshire, a Democratic senator and a Democratic Senate, put a hold on Warren Rudman until Warren Rudman withdrew his nomination. Now, the end of the story was that Warren Rudman then ran against that senator and beat him, and that's how Warren Rudman became a senator. So, Mr. President, we know what a filibuster is. A filibuster is when one side or the other, which it has a perfect right to do under our system of government, decides to try to kill a nomination by denying 60 votes, or to stop legislation by 60 votes. The Democrats have done it on a regular basis when they were in the minority, and the distinguished Majority Leader was one of the most effective persons in the Senate at doing that. I presided many times over the Senate when he objected. I remember when we were trying to get 60 votes to have a permanent change in the estate law, and we'd get up to 57 or 58 or 59, and the distinguished Majority Leader would object. Now, what are we doing today? We're doing today exactly what was said when the vote was called. The question was, do 60 of us believe that it's time to end debate on the nomination of the President to be Secretary of Defense, the leader of the largest military organization in the world, the largest employer in the United States, and the Senate Armed Services Committee has reported that recommendation to the Senate 2 days ago. Not 10 days ago, not 15 days ago, not 30 days ago, 2 days ago. Now, most of us aren't on the Armed Services Committee. Are we not entitled to have more than 2 days to consider one of the most important nominations the President has to make without having the distinguished Majority Leader accuse us of a filibuster? I mean, what we do in this body is debate. We debate issues. And in addition to that, there are a number of people on the Republican side have asked for information for which they haven't received answers yet. Now, in every one of those cases, those are not requests that I'm interested in. They won't produce answers that I need to know. They may be outside the range of questions that I think ought to be answered. But I think after only 2 days of a nomination being on the floor, that if Republican senators have questions to ask and information to seek, that they ought to be allowed to do that. And that's what this is about. So what we have said, and the Democratic leadership knows this, and we've talked in good faith through the morning, we've suggested have this debate when we come back. That would be, instead of 2 days after the bill was reported to the committee or to the Senate floor, it'd be 2 days plus 10, a couple of weeks. Give us a chance to read the hearings, consider the evidence, ask our questions. And there were 3 senators who came down on the floor today, including the senator from Arizona and the senator from South Carolina, who said, then we'll be ready to vote for cloture. In other words, we'll be ready to vote to end debate, to do what the Senate should do, which is eventually, after a full consideration, to have an up or down vote on a president's nominee for the cabinet. At least that's my belief, that eventually you should have an up or down vote on the president's nominee for the cabinet. So it's an unfortunate vote, and it's unfortunate to characterize this as a filibuster. This is a vote by Republicans to say, we want more than 2 days after this nomination comes to the floor to carefully consider it, because we have questions, many have questions, and then most of us believe that after a sufficient time, and for me, a sufficient time will probably be those 10 days. After those 10 days, it'll be time to end debate, it'll be time to have a vote, and it'll be a time to move on to something else. So I want to make sure this is properly characterized. This was a motion to close off debate after 2 days of bringing to the full Senate the president's nomination to lead the largest military organization in the world at a time when senators had reasonable questions for which they want answers. A vote to extend that until 10 days from now or some other appropriate time after that not only is reasonable, it's in the traditions of the Senate, and such reasonableness has been exercised by Democrats as well as Republicans throughout the history of the United States Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.